In every heartache, there's a hidden seed of strength. Join Portia Booker on The Grief Grantor as we journey through stories of resilience, finding gratitude in the echoes of grief. Together, we transform sorrow into strength, pain into purpose. Welcome to The Grief Grantor, where your healing journey begins.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Grief Grantor. I am your host, Portia Booker. I hope that everyone is doing well in this new season of 2024. So really quick, you guys, I had an interesting thing happen to me not too long ago. So those of you know, I always talk about my Uncle Kiki. My Uncle Kiki is literally like my dad. And something that a lot of you may not know about my uncle is that he actually experienced the loss of his only son. And one of the things that I've recognized here on the Grief Grantor is I'm getting more and more guys to come on the show and talk about their grief journey and how they've learned to alchemize it and convert it into a more, what I like to call a movement, right? More in a holistic and healthy way, right? Because when I think about the story of Jesus, right? When Jesus in the Bible, the shortest verse is Jesus wept, right? And something that we tend to not allow in our society or to talk about is allowing men to grieve, allowing men to cry. And the guest who we have today is going to really touch more on that. But when I think about my Uncle Kiki, one thing about my Uncle Kiki, if you guys know him, he's a very masculine, regimented man. I mean, he is an Air Force veteran, and the way that he was brought up wasn't during a time when boys were told you got to man up, right? And the thing about my uncle that I love is that through all of the grief that he's experienced from losing his mother, his two of his sisters, his only son, and also, you know, my mom, who was like his biggest cheerleader, is that he still keeps that level of humanness and softness inside of him. And me and him, we have very deep conversations all the time. And the thing that I love about my uncle is that through all of the loss that we both experience, we still curate and deliver a level of love to everybody around us. So I want to challenge all of you today. If you have a man in your life who you notice might be going through something, open your arms to receive them where they are. If they're lashing out in anger, that's okay. That's their way of expressing their emotions, right? If they're crying, don't mock them. Sit with them. Be present with them. And even offer a way to support them. Ask them what it is that they need and be genuine about it, right? Because that's the thing. When people are grieving, they need, number one, people who are genuine, right? Number two, they need that reassurance and comfort and validation when they're going through whatever tough time. It could not necessarily be the physical transition of someone that they're mourning, right? It might be that job that they were at for 4 or 5 years that became so a part of their identity that they're struggling to find their footing in the world, right? So number one, be genuine when you're around people, be authentic. And lastly, don't forget to also pour back into you. Because let me be honest, being someone who's a giver and also who has gone through grief, sometimes we tend to overgive to everybody else and underdeliver to ourselves. So we're going to take our first break right here on the Grief Grantor, everybody. When we come back, we're going to be joined by, as I mentioned, a very special guest who is going to share their grief journey and how they've learned to not only alchemize their grief, but also created a sense of community for other men to have a space to feel safe. So we'll be right back here on the Grief Grantor.
Hi, I'm Julie Jones Hamilton, and my partner, Lynn Kitchen, and I co-host World's Greatest Motivators every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific on the Achieve channel. Come join us and the best thought leaders in the planet today, right here at E360 TV.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. As I mentioned before we went to break, if you are someone who's supporting a gentleman who is going through the grief journey, make sure that you show up for them and be authentic and genuine. So today we have a very special guest who, what I love to call, the way that we met was through a mutual friend, through their grief journey and also my own. So this individual, his name is Tony Lynch. He is a very dynamic person who has created what I like to call a movement for men, a safe space for men to be able to have a way to voice their grief, have a way to create community and not feel so alone. So without further delay, welcome Tony Lynch to the Grief Grantor. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Portia.
Tony, first and foremost, I extend my gratitude again for you having me on your show, not too long ago, where I was able to talk about my grief journey and, in a sense, combing together all of the different losses that I've experienced and how the initial loss or transition from my dream job really paved the way for me to be able to handle when my parents would transition. So, Tony, I'm going to get right to the nitty gritty. Can you share with our audience how your experiences from your childhood, right, such as being sexually abused to facing all the different hardships that you've experienced as a man has shaped your understanding of grief and its impact on men?
Well, from the journey of being a child growing up, you become different versions of yourself. And as a male, right, it can become a world of confusion. So as you begin to stumble through it, as I like to call it, because, if you don't understand it, you got to try to figure it out. And that's what we're always being taught when we're children, especially when people don't believe that these things do happen to you, right? And it sets you up for a life of survival. And when that's all that you know in life is survival, it kind of makes it kind of hard to see the other side of it. That there's you don't have to survive life; you can actually live it. And so throughout the journey, being homeless, going to prison for 5 years for a crime I never committed, being shot, being molested, all of these different things, it set me up on a path of better understanding, being more self-aware, right? And it really didn't make sense to me for the longest time, right? And it wasn't until when my son was born, my father passed away when he was 6 months old. My younger brother passed away when he was 9 months old. And then when my son was 8, he passed away. And then my mother passed away 2 years after that. And I think that's where the journey really, really started to unravel, so to speak. And what I mean by that, it began to put me in position to be open, right? To receive, to learn things that I never thought. But also, it set me on a path of healing. And what I mean by that as well, because throughout all of that, again, I lost everything, making bad choices, not understanding the grieving process, right? And being alone. I've been alone for a very long time. And so when you don't have anyone to go, hey, what you're going through is totally normal, you tend to fight what's going on with you, right? Because that's what you know. It's our nature. If we don't understand something, we have to fight it. We have to resist it because that's normal to us. And so I did. I fought it. I didn't understand the grieving process. I didn't even know what grief was. I've seen people die before. I mourned them, but it was like, hey, you got to man up. You got to keep going, right? You can't show emotions because in the life that I live, showing emotions can get you killed, right? And then on top of there, the people that you surround yourself with, especially our female counterparts, if we tend to show emotions and things like that, we often wonder, what do you think about me? I don't want to portray that I'm less than the masculine man that you see in front of you. And this is where the myth and the realities tend to blend together. And that's where men make our biggest mistakes. because we're too busy trying to suppress what we're going through to show that we're still a provider and a protector, that we're not weak, not just to you, but to other male counterparts as well, because they're watching us, right? And so what it ended up doing, it took me down a really dark path. I lost everything yet again for the 18th time in my life. And it wasn't a bad thing, right? It wasn't. I know when I say it, it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was bad at that in the beginning, when I was going through it, because I didn't understand it. And what it did, it helped me clear out all of those things that I thought that I needed, that kept me safe. Those things that was normalized to me, it said, nope, you don't need this anymore. And it also took me back on my life to make me start to addressing the things that was keeping me from moving forward. All the way down to my childhood, I began to have to heal the child and began to walk. As I went in the backwards motion and got to that point, I pinpointed where everything started, what made me angry, what got me on this road of survival and things like that. Because over a period of time, you tend to block those things out and your life becomes what it looks like, right? So I began to heal that part. And then I began to hold myself accountable. Then I learned how to forgive myself. Then I had to move forward with it in a way to where I was okay with the person I was becoming. And then I became this adult in this world. And throughout all the losses, it helped me become who I am sitting in front of you right now. A men's grief coach, a peer recovery coach, a suicide interventionist, a mental health first aider, mental health practitioner. And these were things that as a human being, I realized that's what made me whole. Because I couldn't neglect one part of me and work on the other parts of me, because the other parts that you neglect then shows. And so it helped me find a place of peace, connection. I built a relationship with my grief, a very intimate relationship with my grief. And my grief became my biggest mentor. Not saying that, and it doesn't work like that for everyone, right? But I identified my gift, and my gift began to teach me. And so it gave me a different perception on life, right? I realized that I can chunk my days up in the moments when I'm having a rough time. I realized that it doesn't have to affect my whole day. But I also realized that in those moments when I was having a rough time, there were information that I needed to extract from it, to learn. And without knowing it, I was carrying that information over with other people, other men that I was encountering, and I was able to give that information to them. So that's what really actually got me into wanting to start a nonprofit, and having a space for men to be able to talk and be vulnerable, because I realized that when I first started, there was a gap this big, and the men were being bounced around inside of it. There was nothing. I said, you know what? That's where I belong. And I started Memories of Us. And then I turned that into a nonprofit. And of course, COVID hit. And so it was like, everything just kind of flowed together when COVID hit. I was like, okay, you know what? We're going to take it virtually. And I did. And then shortly after that, throughout all the struggles, the challenges, because it's hard to get men to talk. Yes, it really is, and then I started my first podcast, Memories of Us podcast, where I was showcasing the stories of men. And I began to go on those journeys and learn from those men as well. And it helped me become more effective in the lane that I was in. Then I realized that I was the only person in my lane. So I've been enjoying it ever since then. And I've been walking that path, dedicated to serving those men in our communities and providing space for us to be able to talk, be supported, learn how to articulate to the people around us. Because if you don't know what's going on with us, then how can you effectively support us? But also educating the people that have those men in their family on what they see, not the perception, but the reality. And so when you start putting the definitions on top of what you see the men in your life doing, it helps you better understand, right? The nature of the beast, so to speak.
Tony, I gotta ask this. You brought up about how losing everything for the 18th billion time, losing your father, your brother, your son, and then your mom sparked this initiative for you to really look at the little version of Tony, right? The child version of Tony. What did that look like for you to start building and healing that relationship with the little version of Tony?
It was a fight because you got to remember the 6-year-old version of Tony was introduced into a dark world where I understood what people were capable of doing. Adults were capable of doing with children. It happened to me by someone that my mother trusted, my next door neighbor, her son, right? Pretty much watched me grow up. I'm 6 years old. My sister's 2 years old. My mother used to drop us off over at her house when she went to work or went to school. And it just happened one day, being a child, I was playing with He-Man figures. This is 6 years old. This was early 80s, right? He-Man was big with me, right? Like, hey, Tony, you want to come upstairs and play with the He-Man and G.I. Joes? Yeah, why not, right? I trusted him. And I went up there. And that's when it happened. And then when I went to go try to tell someone, no one believed me. So now you're looking at the version of Tony that this has happened to. Now no one believes me. So when it happened to me again, I said, no more. No more. Since no one was going to believe me, now now I become very devious. That dark side of me is now awakened. So now you imagine the Tony that's going back to deal with this younger version of myself. I've been a fighter my whole entire life. So of course, now I have to learn how to nurture this child, the younger version of me. And how do you nurture the younger version of yourself? You're a splitting image. You have to do the opposite. I see you. I'm there with you. But most of all, I got you. So I had to embrace that part of me. And when I did that, I realized that all of that hurt, that pain that was in there began to pour out of me. And I was able to absorb them back into myself. And that younger version of me was able to hold hands with the older version of me. And we began to walk through this life together. And I became a teenager, the angry teenager, the game banger, right? The homeless kid, the inmate. I began to walk with those different versions of myself that I no longer needed. And so I had to heal those versions of me because one thing I understood, sometimes I'm the toxic one, right? And that's hard to admit as being a man because we don't want to admit that sometimes we're the problem. And I can't put blame and fault on everyone that has ever been in my life that I've hurt. It wasn't always their fault. I was trying to protect myself from the pain because I vowed no one's ever going to hurt me again. And I stayed true to that promise. But in staying true to that promise, I hurt a lot of people too. So I had to admit, and I had to learn how to forgive myself. I had to hold myself accountable. And then as the man began to become more self-aware, I had to make sure that I stayed true to that promise of being a better version of myself when I became my authentic self throughout this whole journey. And I've been walking it ever since. So it's a painful journey, definitely painful.
But it was purposeful. It definitely served purpose. And Tony, that's a whole nother conversation about admitting when you're the toxic one in a situation, especially when you're on your own grief journey. So we're going to take a quick break right here on the Grief Grantor, everybody. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Tony Lynch.
Are you ready to illuminate your path and embrace your true purpose? Welcome to the Secrets of Being retreat in the breathtaking landscapes of Costa Rica. Experience a life-changing journey, surrounded by the vibrant energy of nature. Make connections with like-minded visionaries and change-makers like yourself. Discover the power of love and light as we dive into transformative workshops, guiding you to unlock your highest potential and radiate positivity. Connect with the wisdom of the earth, immersing yourself in the beauty of Costa Rica. Let nature inspire your journey of self-discovery. Awaken the visionary within, and let your light guide you to create a positive impact on the world. Join us at the Secrets of Being retreat and shine bright. Reserve your spot now and take the first step towards a purposeful, inspiring life. Embrace the secrets. Embrace your light. Embrace your being.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. We are joined by Tony Lynch, who is a men's grief coach and also a podcaster as well. And we're just having an amazing conversation about his journey of, in a sense, alchemizing his grief, but recognizing that his inner child needed that comfort, that healing in order for him to really start doing the deep work and serve other men. Tony, before we jump into the next part of the conversation, if someone in our audience wants to connect with you and learn more about your work, is there a website or social media handle you can share with us today?
The website is still under construction, but they can find me on Facebook as under Tony Lynch or either Memories of Us. If you're a man looking for support, by all means, find a group on Facebook, Memories of Us, and let me know, and I will get you in there. If you do live in the Loveland-Fort Collins area in Colorado, I do in-person groups. I do one-on-one consultations, and these are absolutely free because there's nothing else than showing up with someone and saying, you know what, I got you, right? So it's my honor to be able to serve these individuals. Or if they're on LinkedIn, they can find me on LinkedIn as well. Tony Lynch, reach out to me there. They can email me, tolynch46@gmail.com. Or they can give me a call, 970-599-9917. They can find me on Instagram as Men's Grief Support. I do a lot of these things, and make it available for individuals.
Excellent. So anybody who wants to connect with Tony and, learn more about his work and really hear his journey of taking his grief and really converting it into something moving, you can connect with him. Tony, something that you brought up, which I love discussing with men, is the role of toxic masculinity, because I think that there's this level of stigma in our society that toxic masculinity is just all it is, toxic, right? And how would you say, Tony, the toxic masculinity can benefit and hinder someone who is on their grief journey?
Well, there's a couple things that you have to do. First, you have to truly identify, is it toxic masculinity or is the person that you would hurting, right? Because there's a difference. There's truly a difference. When a man is hurting, hurt people just like any human being, right? So is the person that you're around, are they dealing with trauma? Are they dealing with, loss? Are they dealing with just life struggles? And this is the recourse of what you're seeing. Or are they abusive? Are they a drug addict? Things like that. These are other things that before you identify it as toxic masculinity, you have to identify and eliminate those things first. Now, when you get down to the bare minimum of it, when you run across people who have just bad intentions towards you, that's toxic, because that means that they don't care nothing about you. And this is where we label the toxicness, and we can start putting those labels as narcissistic, right? That's the biggest one right there. Are they narcissistic? You have to look for those red flags. If you've been in a narcissistic relationship before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But also you have to identify the different levels of the narcissism, right? Because you got the extreme one, right? And I've been in a very abusive relationship with a woman, and she was an extreme narcissist, and that's how I learned what a narcissist was, right? And how far they will go to destroy your life. I've been there, right? You know what I'm saying? And as a male, to admit something like that, because we don't want to admit that we get our butts whipped, right? That we've been in an abusive relationship, that someone, because abuse can carry on different phases. And if you're unfamiliar with them, it's easy to get caught up in it, right? The mental abuse, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, the spiritual abuse, and of course the physical abuse, right? So you have to identify it before you say it's toxic. And what I mean, when I found out that I was the toxic one, I looked at the amount of women that I hurt. I looked at the amount of people that I hurt along the way, physically, like being in the game 24 years, right? If I didn't agree with what you was wearing, it didn't matter to me. I'm about to come punch you out. We about to go toe to toe. We're going to go fist to cuffs. That individual may not have been even game banging, but because I was angry at the world and had been hurt so much, I said, you know what? I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. And even though their intentions may not have been that, my intentions were. That's what made me toxic. Because when it came down to women, when it came down to the people that I was hanging around with, I was emotionally detached from them. That's a very, very crazy place to be in. Very, very chaotic, right? And I accepted the chaotic, the chaos. I accepted it. It was just the way that it was, and I learned how to roll with it. You know what I'm saying? I really did. I would rob you, right? So I would rob you. I would hurt you. I would do all kind. I was selling drugs, and life had a strange way of coming back and saying, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. So every time I got knocked down, it was easier for me to play the victim than it was easier for me to play the villain. If I could say, well, this is happening to me, I have an excuse to go out there and take it from someone else. I can't see you walking around with something that I don't have when I just had all of this. Oh, I got a gun. I'm gonna take it from you. I didn't care about what you was going through. I didn't care about if it was your kids' toys, or I didn't care if it was your last bit of money to go buy groceries. I'm gonna take it from you. Life came back and said, oh, you did this to them. Well, I'm going to do this to you. Right? The women who had good intentions towards me and was like, hey, I just want to see you live a good life. I was like, you keep your little butt on over there. And it was easy for me to go, you know what? No, that's not going to happen. I'm going to use you. I'm going to take what I can from you. And then I'm going to leave you in the dust. You hurting? It don't bother me none. Until I got hurt. So that's what I mean. I was the toxic one. But also, we can also identify it as this as well. So at least in my situation, sometimes I became the seasonal one, right? I'm the seasonal one. I'm the one that comes in and out of people's lives and never understood why. But I understand now that I'm there for a reason, and I'm only there for a season. I can't get attached to you because my gift says this is what I'm here for. And that's where I now sit, right? My gift says, hey, this is what you're here for. This is your purpose. Let's walk it. So you have to identify the, true toxic masculinity in it, and on both sides, right? And sometimes that can be a very thin line to walk.
Tony, when I think about how you mentioned you're the seasonal one at times, right? Obviously, the different individuals who you've cultivated relationships with, there was a level of trust built there. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, for our audience, for other men, how can they learn, and how did you learn to build trust again, to be open to having relationships with individuals who truly want to help you when you were hurting from the very beginning? But now that you've gone on your healing journey, and other men who might be where you were at one point, how can they learn to build that trust again? Where does that start?
Well, it starts in your darkest place, right? And as crazy as it sounds, it does start in your darkest place, because in your darkest place is when you find yourself. It's when you truly find yourself, right? Because when you're in your darkest place is when you're honest with yourself. As crazy as it may sound, and that's what happened. So, although being homeless, see, I have to look at it this way as well. Although I was homeless, life had a strange way of moving me around and connecting me with the people I needed to be with. And even though I had trust issues, there was a side of me. Now, this is where it starts to get kind of tricky, right? Because there was a side of me that was going, I want to see if these people, if their intentions are good. And in turn, my gift was saying, you're here for a reason. I didn't understand that. And so my gift allowed me to have a sense of a little bit of trust towards these individuals. And then what I mean by a little bit of trust, because if you tried to hurt me, I have a whole lot of distrust there too, right? You know what I'm saying? So in a sense, I'm still surviving, but something inside of me said, hey, it's not the time for that. These people are here to help you. You're homeless right now. Let's see what happens. So it became a give. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't understand it. They was here for my gift. And I'm here because they given me a place to stay, a roof over the top of my head. They helped me along my path. So my journey just kept going. And you know what I'm saying? I would leave that place and I end up somewhere else. So I've been all over the place, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm 49 years old. I've been on my own since I was 15. So the only time that I was really stable or in one spot, except for right now, is when I was in prison, right? From 94 to 99. That's the only place that you really knew how to, hey, at least I know where you at, right? Other than that, I was, I lived out of a duffel bag, right? All I had, 5 pairs of underwear, 5 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of pants, and 5 shirts. That's all I needed. I didn't need nothing else, because anything else, if I would just lose it anyway, so what was the purpose? And then when I did, I was out there on the streets and I really lost everything, right? You know what I'm saying? I only had one pair of everything. And so imagine that one and having to rebuild from there. But it was the connections that you made. So now my gift has opened me up to receive what the world is giving me, the blessings. On top of all the challenges and the lessons, I appreciate all of that. I appreciate the homelessness. I appreciate when life came back and taught me that, hey, we can't keep doing this, because, you know what I'm saying, you can't keep going through life hurting people. You know what I'm saying? God don't like that. You can't keep hurting God's children, because God has a strange way of coming back and going, got you, right? Or we like to call it karma, right? But God taught me, God taught me a different lesson, especially when I started to develop that relationship with Him. And I went, I have no examples of what a man is supposed to be. you're my example. And I need to have a relationship with you so I can become a better man. And it was all of me saying, I want something better out of my life. I'm too tired. I'm so tired. I don't want to fight anymore. And I said, look, I give up. I give up. I don't want to do it no more. And I'm down to the bare minimum. I'm down on my knees. And hell, I was probably a lot lower than that. I was probably down on my belly, just eating dirt, you know. And but that's the way it felt, right? That's when you hit your version of rock bottom. And in that place of rock bottom, of wanting to give up, of wanting to surrender, I just remember that this analogy that came into my head. I just kept throwing the towel back into the ring. I'm done. I don't want to do it no more, right? And the towel just kept getting thrown back to me. Stand up, take a breath. It's okay to rest. We can't stay here. We got more to do. And I think that's the part of me that that was really lead me along the path of discovering my journey. You know, you can only see what so many people die. You can only, you can only see what so many people commit suicide. You can only see what so many people in your community hurting because the drugs that you sell. The children aren't safe anymore. See, even though I had that dark side, I always have morals. You can only see the old people, our elderly, have the look of fear on their face when they see us, but so much. And there has to be something inside of you to go, I want something better. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And I knew this, but I just didn't know how I was going to change it. And so when you're in a place of where you've been betrayed and, by the people that's supposed to care about you, and you've had your trust destroyed, when you're developing a relationship, whether if it's God, whomever, right? When you develop that relationship, you at some point have to open up a small section of you for somebody to come in and show you that it's okay to trust. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to love back. It's okay to receive this love. It's okay because not everybody's out to hurt you, Tony. Not everybody's out to do it. The problem is you have to practice discernment on who's out to hurt you and who's not out to hurt you. And this is where we go back to, I had to start putting on that armor, right? You know what I'm saying? I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone, right? You know what I'm saying? And I need to surround myself with like-minded individuals because I still need to learn. I'm a student. I still need to learn from the women and the men, good women and good men, who have been walking this path a lot longer than me. And I had to humble myself and go, I am willing to walk behind you and listen to what you're saying and apply it to my life so I can be better, because you're inspiring me to be a better version of myself. But it's also inspired me to have a better relationship with my father, because he is still my original mentor. He is my guiding light and my protector. I don't no longer have to protect myself anymore. And it feels good not to have that burden on my shoulder. It feels good to have someone that I know I can trust. But it also feels good to know that my son, my brother, my parents, and all of those people that I've lost before, to know that they're still there watching over me. It's not a lonely place anymore. He may not be here in a physical sense, but man, they're still here. And if I can give that to the next man and articulate it to him in a way to where he can understand it and actually grab it and want to do better for himself, but not just for himself. He's primarily doing it for himself, but he's doing it because he wants to become a better father. He wants to become a better spouse. He wants to become a better brother, a better son, a better cousin, a better friend. That's that man right there that you're going to see walking down the street that's encouraging other men and protecting the children and the women in this community. And that's how we rebuild our communities. We break ties with our government. We say, no, no more, because now we can start to heal, because now he becomes an inspiration. And that's what drives me. That's what drives me, because I love seeing our communities heal. And that excites me because it makes me want to see what the future holds now. How are our kids going to turn out? Let's rebuild our women. Because if we pour into our women pour back into us. And our women pour back into us, we can pour into our kids to get them better, right? To be better mentors, better examples for them. But also when we do that, we can also pour back into our community and rebuild it to where we can actually say, this is the community that I want to raise my child in.
There's unity in the community. My mom used to say it all the time. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly.
So we're going to take another quick break right here on the Grief Grantor, everybody. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Tony Lynch.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Greg Russell. I'm the host of TechnologyTuesday.com. You can find us on the Conscious Business TV network every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the latest resources to help you make more money in your business. Join us on E360 TV. Come on.
All right, everybody, welcome back right here on the Grief Grantor. We are joined by Mr. Tony Lynch. And Tony, I want to extend my gratitude to you for coming on and being so honest and so vulnerable and generous with your experience, with your life, with your journey, to really not only just empower other men, but also their support networks, right? Some of these men may have children who are grown or women in their lives who want to really help them through their grief, whatever that might be a result of. So I'm curious, Tony, and you brought this up a little bit in the beginning, for women who have men in their lives, let's be realistic, because I have a brother and I have cousins who are men, and let's be honest, there's still that stigma that men have to be the chin man. They have to not show any ounce of emotion because it shows vulnerability, it shows weakness, right? So for women, whether they're a sister, a mother, a girlfriend, a spouse, whatever, what advice will you give them to how they can provide support for the man in their lives that, number one, respects the unique aspect that men's grief looks differently, and also, two, build a closer relationship with them and the men in their lives?
Well, here's the difficult part. You have to look at perception versus reality, right? So the perception is when you see a man angry, destroying things, isolated, and things like that, the first thing that we think, the average person would think, especially the female counterparts in our families or the people who are around us, is like, oh, this individual is crazy. There's something wrong with them. Here's the reality. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There's something wrong with them. They're not crazy. Perception versus reality. Reality is this man is showing emotions. It's a matter of what they're doing. So I often start conversations off with when I help women out to identify what that man is going through. And this is out of the room without men being in there, because what I'm saying, they're and they're kind of trying to change it up a little bit, right? But you can't change it up with too much, because we're creatures with habits. When men are young boys and we get in trouble, you ever heard the term, boy, you better stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, right? Suck it up. So very, very young, we go and we puff our chest out. What's the second thing that we do? We go off and we punching walls. We out in the yard fighting with our friends. If you got a younger sibling or older sibling, you're fighting with them. Huh? What are you doing? You've just told me that if I cry, you're going to give me something to cry about. I don't have an outlet. Oh, what does that mean? So women, when you're seeing your man do these things, he's crying. He's expressing himself the best way he knows how. And so instead of looking at him and criticizing him, understanding the reality versus perception and approach it accordingly. Feed or nurture. Go, I see what you're doing. Maybe give him a little bit of space, but also remind him that, hey, if you need me, I'm here. I'm going to nurture you. Because when you do that, unspoken word, unspoken things like that, right? Men would take that like, do I need to approach it with caution? Are they really seeing what I'm going through right now? So men are fickle, right? Because grief is fickle. Hurt is fickle. The expression of that is very fickle. So it's a blurred line that if you don't understand what that line is, it's easy to cross over. It's easy to go in and go, well, here's another thing. When you see a person doing something, if a man trusts you enough to open up to you, the last thing that you want to do is start off your conversation, well, with I. Because now you just invalidated me. You've just now taken away from the experience that I'm trying to share with you, because I'm trusting you enough to articulate what's going on with me, even though I may not fully understand. When you do that, you pretty much say, I see what you're going through, but I've gone through something worse, right? But if the shoes were reversed, you want me to listen to you. You don't want me to start my conversation off and make it about me, do you? You want me to comfort you and sit in that space with you and you know what I'm saying, and be that male strength that you need. Well, we need the same thing from you. We need that from you. We first and then we need that respect too. That is truly important. Don't invalidate us, because once you do that, you're never that male. And I've done this before. We become a version of ourselves that can survive that relationship. But you won't like that version of me, because you just now cut off parts of me that would have made me more into you. Now you have to go with the version of me that's been surviving. And you just contributed that unknowingly. So perceptions versus reality. You have to educate yourself. You have to look at your version of yourself and become the version of that you need, because that male needs that version of the self of you as well, because you want that version of him to come back to you. Again, you pour into him, he pours into you. You begin to pour into each other. You fill up each other's cup. When you fill into each other's cup, now you can pour into other people. You just now become that version that's on that healing path. Mm-hmm. It's a bumpy road. It's very, very challenging. It's very painful, right? But I will tell you this: if both sides can learn how to do that with each other, it becomes a beautiful thing. It becomes this awesome journey. Now you can't do it alone. Surround yourself with people that will be able to do this. Men, surround yourself with men, that have gone through similar things. It makes the conversation that much easier to have. And women do the same thing. This is what we say: find your tribe. Find that tribe, not just with people that can verbalize to uplift you, but people, and this is where the fun part gets. People that can actually speak to your love language, right? That's the deepest connection that you can ever have, because that's where your community comes from. You can be around people all day long that can speak really well, articulate what's going on, right? But it's the way that they interact with you. And you need people that can articulate, but that can interact in on that level that normal people won't see. So if you're a gift giver, I may be the type of person that may want like to receive gifts, right? Boom, boom, boom. There you go, right? You know what I'm saying? And it opens up the doors for communication, for connection, and within that group. And those are the ones that will walk with you every step of the way. Not everybody is equipped to walk with you, so be prepared for that as well, right? And it don't take things personally. When you go on your healing journey, you're going to get challenged every step of the way. Guess what? It's not personal. It's not personal. That's life's way of saying, are you really prepared to walk this journey and receive the other side of what you've been missing? That there is fun. That's a beautiful journey.
I couldn't agree more, Tony. I mean, grief in itself is a beautiful journey. If we look at it through all the pain, right, it teaches us a lot about life. It teaches us a lot about ourselves. I mean, considering your journey, Tony, of losing your father, your brother, your son, your mom, also the 18 other losses that you've experienced from being incarcerated, homelessness, right? You stand as a testament to, through the trenches, there is a testimony, right? There's a miracle at the end of the mess. And I think for each and every one of us, that stands true. No matter what type of grief or change or loss we experience, an open door is there for us, right? Tony, we're going to be wrapping up here soon, and I want to again extend my gratitude for you coming on the show. As we conclude, Tony, what words of inspiration and hope can you leave today with other men who are on their grief journey that want to do it differently, that want to open up to healing, that want to open up to a sense of community or build a closer relationship to the women in their lives who want to actually support them? What words of hope and inspiration can you leave with them today?
Wow. I was thinking about this as well. Don't focus so much on the destination of who you're becoming, but fall in love with the process of who you're becoming. The journey of healing is one of self-awareness, is one of vulnerability. Be open to it. Be open to it, but be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself, and most importantly, have patience with yourself, because this is unfamiliar territory. So be patient with yourself, because you can't beat yourself up over something that you don't know. Learn, right?
Tony, that learn part, I wish more people would be open to that, because grief teaches us so much. It's through the loss that we learn, right? We learn that life is duality. There's going to be happy moments in addition to sad moments. There's going to be karma. There's going to be moments where we're down on our knees questioning, why am I still here? But it's in those moments where the miracle has already happened, because you learned that all the old ways that you've been trying to navigate life are not working. So now you're open to help and support. And that's what grief has taught me. And I see that it's taught you the same thing.
Yes.
Well, everybody, that was Tony Lynch, the men's grief coach that you heard from here on the Grief Grantor. And that concludes another episode. And until next week, everybody, take care.
Thank you for joining us on the Grief Grantor. May the story shared today light your path and guide your heart toward healing. Remember, with every moment of grief, there's an opportunity for gratitude, resilience, and empowerment. Continue your journey with us online and share your own story, because in this tapestry of life, every thread matters, especially yours.